The construction collapse blamed on massive greed. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee. Let's have a look at this article from the ABC, written by Nassim Kadem. Construction firms are collapsing after a loss-making boom, and massive greed is to blame. So let's look at this. After witnessing 4 decades of boom-to-bust cycles in Australia's residential property industry, experienced Gold Coast developer Sohail Abedin puts the construction industry's current woes down to one simple reason: greed. In fact, it's massive greed, he says, that is the product of the capitalist system that we have here in Australia and the Western world, that everyone would like to have more and more profit. Okay? He said the construction industry's current woes were created by too much government stimulus, short supply, and unsustainable prices. Okay, now, here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with greed. You're not going to get rid of greed. It exists in non-capitalist systems as well. It's just, well, you need to manifest that in different ways, usually being a weasel and having political connections. And I wouldn't call Australia a purely capitalist or free market economy. There's a lot of government intervention. And here, this is the real reason, guys. It's the government stimulus that has exacerbated all of this. And for those of you playing at home, let's remind ourselves how the government came to the rescue. So the RBA crashed the cash rate to 0.1%. 3% used to be emergency levels, giving them room to move. You had home builder overheated the housing market. You had home buyer grants, 88 grand. Now you've got shared equity as well. None of these things are free market. This is all stolen taxpayer money used to fund these things, and it'll drive up demand without addressing supply. You had 5 and 2% government loan guarantees. 2%. That's insane. You've got a culture of negative gearing, and you had all the super withdrawals as well. And don't forget, you also had the government changing the rules so zombie companies could be kept alive and businesses could trade while insolvent. Now we're starting to see builders go bust, left, right, and centre. Nearly every other week, there's another builder going under. So, is this a fault of massive greed in a capitalist system, or is it a crony capitalist market system where there's a lot of intervention in the market, so it can't respond like it needs to? How many people should be in trouble now with mortgages that are much too high, and the market should have corrected? But no, they juiced the market. So, crucially, the cost of key building materials such as steel and timber lifted by more than 40% in 1 year, although big developers were able to negotiate better prices than smaller players. So who's to blame? All of us. The Persian Australian property developer who co-founded ASX-listed Sunnybank Group told ABC in an exclusive interview. Every single person that is taking part in the industry. Those of us that are we just going to ignore the rising shipping costs coming out of China, which is the result of all of the significant import costs in our materials here in Australia? How's that our fault? We increase the price without even understanding that. Ultimately, it will backfire on every single part of the industry, and we see that happening now. So he's built tens of thousands of homes across the Gold Coast and is also behind some of the Strip's most iconic developments, including bringing the first fashion-branded Palazzo Versace to Australia. Sunnybank Group is winding down by selling off its assets, but the family plans to continue to run a private development business. He predicts more builders will topple over in the coming months. Let me say that the collapse of the construction companies has just started, he said. I think for the next 12 to 18 months, we will see a decline in production. We will see a decline in sales, and then we will go through a period, maybe call it a stabilization period. I believe the second-tier, third-tier construction companies will be very vulnerable. I think it depends on the sector that you're working in. I think if you're building in a sector that's, fueled by a lot of government work, and you've got a good pipeline, you'll probably be fine. But if you're dependent on developer projects at the whims of foreign investment, you may be in trouble. And I think the first-tier construction companies, they will survive, although maybe the margin will be smaller than what they thought. Another industry heavyweight who fears for the residential construction sector is Meriton founder Harry Trigueroff. The 89-year-old Russian Jew real estate developer has seen the highs and lows of Australia's property market for almost 60 years. He built his first block of units in Sydney, suburb of Tempe, in 1963. When he is asked whether greed is behind the industry's demise, Mr. Triguboff, who became known as High-Rise Harry for his signature skyscrapers in Sydney and Queensland, is more subtle in his response. He says while he does not do pre-sales, too many builders locked themselves into this arrangement before material costs surged and they were left out of pocket. There you go. So I think Harry's got an interesting perspective about it. Buying off the plan, guys. You know, I'm not a fan of it. The builders love doing it, building. So they're going in and hoping for the best, he told ABC News. And normally prices do go up. So even if a builder thought that he would make only a small profit, in the end it'll turn out okay. This time, unfortunately, the prices went down instead of up. So when a builder had a small margin, he couldn't do it, make a profit. That is the problem. I hope that as many builders as possible will remain, and I hope they'll learn not to work with such a small margin. That is my advice to them, as much as they love that business. So fixed price contracts became a burden. This is because we've only known good times. We've only known good times. In the last 30 years, we haven't had a recession. So we haven't had much inflation either. As supply chains became constrained and the cost of building materials shot up, builders weren't knocking back work. They kept signing on new clients, even as they were asking existing ones for advance payments to fund the higher building costs. Consumers had flocked to the market because of ultra-low interest rates and stimulatory COVID-19 pandemic support measures such as Home Builder, in the hope they could finally build their dream home, but suddenly fixed contracts became a burden. For many builders, some of which had signed fixed-price contracts and had not locked in their own prices for suppliers, the loss-making boom had become too hard to manage. Some were driven to the brink and many had fallen over. One of the many builders to recently collapse is Langford Jones Homes. The company had gained a solid reputation for more than 45 years of building homes around the Bayside and southeastern suburbs of Melbourne and nearby regional areas including Phillip Island, South Gippsland and Mornington Peninsula. But when it went under on June 30, it left many consumers, including San Remo resident Donna Taylor, in limbo. It's heartbreaking, she told ABC News, breaking down in tears over the home that never got built. It just wrecked my life, and there's so many more people there that are like me that it's just ruined. Well, I mean, your life isn't bloody over. Your house has been delayed, okay? Come on. Seriously. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be the picture-perfect response you expected. Are we so bloody Australians so mollycoddled that a bit of adversity ruins our entire life these days? I guess we haven't had a recession in 30 years. Is this the price of just knowing good times? Of not going through tough times? She sold her Wantirna home and purchased a block of land in San Remo in 2020. She signed contracts with Langford Jones Homes in 2020. They were contracted to build her dream home in 365 days. The company went into liquidation nearly 20 months after she had signed on, owing more than $20 million to 400 creditors, of which around $7 million are loans made to businesses by the Langford Jones family. On Monday, the liquidators from RSM Australia Partners said it's not clear there will be enough money to pay a dividend to creditors. Company founder Bruce Langford Jones and his two sons are among the creditors. Now all Miss Taylor is left with is a rotting timber frame that needs to be pulled out and mounting debris and sleepless nights. At 53 years of age, Miss Taylor was hoping she could start to wind down. Then why the hell are you building a new home at 53? If you want to wind down, go and buy a cheap little already built house in a complex, a duplex. Building a house is stressful. But now she's got to keep two jobs, take on a new mortgage to fund the extra build costs. She's looking for a new builder to do the job from scratch. While builder's warranty insurance covers her for the money she's already paid, Langford Jones Homes, Ms. Taylor said she's left out of pocket because the cost to build with someone new has increased significantly since 2020, then reduce the scope of work. Go down to one story. Don't do two stories. Do one story. reduce the scope. The first quote I've already had indicates I'll be out of pocket 180 grand just to finish the build. I just feel like there's no justice. I just wasted 2 years waiting, and I don't have the house that I wanted, and I have to start again. It'll take another 2 years probably to finish off the build. Like Mr. Aberdeen, she also thinks greed is behind the building industry's current woes. I paid 45% of her original contract price. She paid 45% of her original contract price of $365 for a completion of frame stage. The remaining $210,000 is left to pay. Well, what's wrong with the frame? Surely you can get someone to inspect it, replace the little bit of timber that's been rotten, get up there with a tarp, put a tarp on there, hire a contractor to put a tarp on it to protect the frame. Go to Bunnings, spend $500 on tarps, get them on there, get them tied down to kind of limit the amount of water that's getting in there, and get a builder to come and inspect the damage. She says she got an email from Language Owns Home in January 2021 requesting that she pay for her upgrades within 7 days or face a 15% penalty. In her mind, that indicated they were in trouble. The builder requested she pay for upgrades again in February, but she declined, given the frame had not gone up at that stage. She said after the company finally started the frame later that month and completed it in April 2022. I think a lot of companies have known they've been in trouble for some time and have just kept signing more customers up and taking their deposit funds. She said, yeah, she's probably right. They got desperate. This is what happens. Okay. Here we have people blaming greed. It's not greed. Greed is never going to go away, okay? Don't kid yourself. If we get some socialist bullshit utopia, there'll still be greed. It'll just be the sycophants who can kiss ass in the party that get the bigger piece of meat, or they get extra time in the hovel. I don't know. It's just an alternative method. The greed still exists, okay? The problem is the government intervening and screwing up the market. It's the juicing and handing out the money to everyone at the same time to get builds going, everything overheating. That's what it is. The government is to blame here. It just seems wrong that they can ruin so many people's lives and nothing gets done and they just walk away. Langford Jones Home founder, in a written statement, the company's customers were covered by warranty insurance. There's nothing, they're screwed. And hey, at least he didn't go to Thailand like that other guy we found. Let's have a look here. Double Lammy, the list of builders collapsing mounts. Yeah, well, we've gone through all of these. I need to map them out. Let's have a look. ABS data shows reinforcing steel jumped 42%, structural timber up 40%. Yeah, we're aware of all of this. Prices have increased. So that's not greed, is it? Change in the price of skilled trades. The problem is it comes down to two things. Government overheating the market artificially and fixed price contracts to protect consumers. This is what happens when you have these clauses in place to protect consumers. When you've got insane inflation, the builders fall over. And then the consumers complain. Okay? So the housing construction industry starts to fall. Yeah, we'll see. Let's keep going. What else is in there? If there's a recession, it'll be short-lived. So Meriton's Harry Triguboff believes rising interest rates could cause further industry chaos. He wants the Reserve Bank to tread more carefully and goes as far as suggesting they cut interest rates. But he believes even if they move aggressively, a recession won't last long. If there's a recession, it'll only be a very short period, so who knows? He said when he's asked whether high rates could tip us into one. The Reserve Bank is trying to go in step with America. America is in huge trouble, much bigger than ours. But Mr. Triguboff, who has to date completed an estimated 50,000 residential dwellings, knows the reality of Australia's political system, that politicians, both state and federal, never let the property market tank. Yeah, I think we have enough evidence now over the last 2 years that they're going to do everything they can to keep property going. I know that there's people making predictions of big crashes, of people going into mortgage stress or default. They're going to do whatever they can to keep it going. To that end, he says, whatever happens, Australia's housing market will need to be supported by all levels of government with easier and faster planning approvals and more migration. Now the government wants the price to go up, because if prices don't go up, Their governments don't get stamp duty, and they don't get all the money that we pay them. We are the main source of income for the state governments. Now, they can't afford to lose that forever. Wait till they get land tax, get rid of stamp duty and bring in more taxes, like in New South Wales. Oh, boy. Regulators also know that moving too hard on rates could tip borrowers like Queensland couples Stacey and Anthony Ashton into financial stress. The couple's journey to build their dream home has been an ordeal. Starting in late 2019, they bought their first home in Cedar Creek. They contracted Builder Plan Build in 2020, but the company went into insolvency in April 2021. It happened the day before their wedding. It was quite stressful and quite upsetting. There were a few tears. Miss Ashton said, the day before your wedding. That sucks. Then our honeymoon was essentially ruined because we were just trying to find a new builder as soon as we could to get our home started. Mr. Ashton says building prices had escalated and they were in a rush to find a new builder so they could get the $25,000 home builder grant at the time. Okay, here's the problem. They were artificially incentivized to rush to get a builder in because of this stupid grant. Overheating the market. Instead of saying, okay, we'll wait a month, enjoy our honeymoon, then we'll settle down and check it. In the end, the new builder they chose, who they do not wish to identify, was not their preferred option. But Mr. Ashton says they made the decision based on price. The couple are now having to pay extra to fix what they claim are building defects. And their application for the $25,000 grant also ended up being rejected by the State Revenue Office, as they subsequently learned that while the new builder held a builder's license when they contracted to build, he did not when their grant was assessed. Are you kidding? The whole build process was extremely taxing on us emotionally, he said. They still owe a big mortgage on the land and house, and with rising rates they may have to sell. How? What? Really? I mean, it looks beautiful, but maybe you should have just built half. Well, no, that's just a garage. That shouldn't be that expensive, a house like that. We had to budget quite tightly, and we don't have a cent spare each week. We're living paycheck to paycheck at the moment. Shit. They've gone too close to the edge. They've gone too close to the edge. Time to go Dave Ramsey mode and do beans and rice. Don't sell, rent it out. Rent it out, move home. That's not fun. Every promise is broken. Mr. Ashton urged Australians to be careful when signing contracts. I would just say there's no gentleman's agreement anymore, he said. There's no pride in people's work. All you can rely on is contracts these days. And that's the sad thing about the market at the moment. Every promise is broken. So you fall back on your contract, rely on that, and budget with money for legal fees, because unfortunately when things go wrong, that's all you can rely on. Well, yeah. I guess that's someone just gaining some experience in the industry. Ms. Taylor also urges people to be careful and hold off building for now if they can. She fears as the carnage unfolds, more consumers will suffer. I just wish there was more out there to protect us. You know, some state, governing body. I know it's ABC. I know it's. Let's talk about this. It's ABC. I know it's going to be, left-leaning. They want government body to protect us. It's the evil greed. It's the greed that's causing this. The government are the ones that caused this mess in the first place. Why do you think we have fixed price contracts? Why do you think there aren't contracts for construction of residential homes that have a contingency for increases in material costs? Why don't you think they exist? Because we need to protect the consumer. The consumer needs to be protected. This is what happens, guys. They want more governing bodies to protect us. Shit. And I was hoping Australians would see the damage that this has all been caused by this government intervention and then push for smaller government, for less intervention. Now they're just going to vote for more. It's just going to be more and more. And all of this adds to the cost of builds. It makes it more expensive to build. But then again, I guess they only want party members to own houses, don't they? Maybe I'm getting paranoid here. So no, I wouldn't agree. I don't think it's greed that's caused this. Greed always exists. Don't kid yourself to think it's ever going to disappear, and don't think that people don't compete for things or work hard to achieve or succeed. Even in the socialist utopias that people are dreaming of, you're going to have the same competition for even less resources because no one will work harder than they have to. Anyway, I need to read something more sensible to cleanse the palate of the ABC here. So let's keep it in mind, guys. Thanks for watching. Check out my other videos on HeiseBIM and HeiseSays International, channels where I discuss tools I use as an architect and other things, and international news. If you want to support the channel, there are a few ways you can: financially on YouTube or Patreon, using our referral links on Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve or AussieBroadband, buying our pocket squares, or calling us if you need an architect. Take care, everyone. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time. It's always greed, isn't it? Oh, well. Are we surprised?